in your life.
All right, thank you all. We'll go ahead and get this meeting underway. Start with the approval of minutes from our July meeting. Rachel sent those out yesterday. Anybody have any comments, changes? All right, well, let's get a motion and a second. All right. I'll let you decide who got that, Petra. And all in favor of accepting the minutes, raise your hand. Sounds good. All right, we'll move on to old business. Don't have a whole lot, but I'll run through each of them. Should be a fairly short meeting today. We've got a few things to discuss under new business. So the first under old business is the Kiowa Landscape Work Group, the Grow Native program. Really don't have any update on that, on that group per se, but obviously the town is still pushing the Grow Native initiative. And one project that we've got in the pipeline is to do some re-landscaping here at the Town Hall Municipal Complex. Most of it is geared towards replacing dead, dying, suffering plant material, and also geared towards safety along the roadway, the entrance roadway. There are a lot of tall grasses and shrubs and saw meadows that have grown up, and it's very difficult to see around corners, and the sight lines are pretty well, they're less than ideal. And so we've been working with the same landscape architectural firm that we use for the parkway on kind of a redesign of the complex. And we've seen the initial plans. They look really good. So it'll be a similar conceptual design as the parkway. So, almost entirely native grasses, perennials, kind of just an extension of what we did along the parkway. So we're hoping to get that project approved here in the next month or two, and get that completed and in the ground probably by next spring. Next is Shorebird Stewardship Program. I don't have anything. Aaron, is there anything you want to add on that? If you can unmute. I know you're driving. There you go.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's the breeding season is pretty much over with for shorebirds right now. So we're kind of shifting, I think, gears now into fall migration and winter, which would include piping plovers. So I think we've got stewards who are going to start stewarding for piping plovers and other migrating shorebirds this fall and through the winter.
Sounds good. All right, next is flood mitigation, sea level rise. Lucas, you got any updates on where you stand with all that?
Yes. So in the last meeting, I mentioned that I would be presenting to the board. So Kika's board has now seen my initial recommendations for thresholds and trigger points. They also have the proposed monitoring plan moving forward. In the October board meeting, the public board meeting, I'll be presenting that to the community, and the board will provide a formal vote on moving forward with that resilience plan. So afterward, I plan to present to both the town and the Conservancy. That's my update.
All right, thanks, Lucas. Next is Grow Native Parkway Landscaping. That project's completed, so I need to remove that from old business in the future. So next is Rodenticides and Wildlife. I'll just touch on a few things on that front. In terms of testing of animals, we have not received any results since our last meeting. We do have 2 raccoons, 2 American crows, and a black vulture that we've taken liver samples from that we'll be sending in here pretty shortly. We have had a number of sick and dying American crows in the last couple of months. I think Aaron has maybe 5 samples. So we took livers from 2, but we've got 5 that will go to, I think 5 that will go to DHEC for West Nile testing. So, it's potentially it's West Nile. So once we get those results back, I'll certainly let everyone know. Any questions on that? I guess the only other thing on that front is just a quick update on the Clemson research project, which we've been talking about for many months. As you know, the graduate student is on board, Megan Keating. She was down in August, met with a number of folks while she was here, including presenting to town council. And so we've been working on her formal proposal that will go before her graduate committee, and starting to order materials to start field work this winter. So expect to have that full proposal probably by November. And then field work would begin in January, February of 2022. Any questions on that? All right, so moving on to deer management. The only update on that is that we will be conducting our first round of spotlight surveys in October. And then we'll do a second set in probably December or January. And then at that point, we'll look at the density and then make a recommendation on potentially removing some additional deer this year. I don't know if anyone has noticed, but it does seem like there's still quite a few deer on the island. So, I think our surveys will certainly bear that out. And I think it's quite likely that we'll be harvesting additional deer this winter.
Jim, when you say additional deer, do you mean in excess of the 100 you took out last year?
Yeah. So we took out 100 last year. So, we'll look at the densities. I mean, this year it could be more like 200, depending on what we see. But 100 was a good number to get us going with the program. Again, we still remain hopeful that, we're starting to see at least some recovery in our bobcat numbers. And so hoping that, this removal of deer is not something we'll have to do for forever, but hopefully just for a couple of years. But, it looks like we're going to need to increase the number this coming year. All right, so next is Kewok Conservancy Projects. We don't have Lee here, but we do have Collie and Taylor. So I don't know, Collie, if you have anything you want to update on?
Yeah, nothing too much. Lee just did tell me to tell you all that, the projects are moving forward, no crazy developments to really express at this time, but everything's in motion and is going as planned.
Sounds good. All right, next is Green Initiative Working Group. Dr. Parker, that's you.
Eddie, I am up in the hole. We are actually having our third meeting tomorrow afternoon at 3, at which time we are going to be crafting together a much more firm working document with specific projects, timelines, and then we'll be working to communicate that out to the general public probably in a week or so following that. So I'm feeling very positive that we're making slow but steady progress. All of the parties are really doing some good work, and a lot of the things that have been suggested seem to be very feasible going forward. And it's also surprising, probably not surprising, but there's an awful lot of green initiatives that each of the entities are doing on their own and have been for a while that I think most of the public is just not aware of. And so we're also going to be communicating where they stand with the current projects and then what we're going to be doing going forward. And so there'll be more communicated within the next couple of weeks.
Sounds good. All right, so we'll move on to new business now. We've got 2 items to discuss. The first is one that Scott brought to my attention a while back, and so something that I just want to have a conversation about and kind of get the feel of the committee on where we want to go. And I guess, Scott, I'll let you talk about it in just a second, but just, in general, the the concern is that likely a number of retail establishments, the club included, when the town passed their plastics ordinance, basically the way our ordinance reads is it banned the use of plastic straws. And so while some establishments went to paper straws, others went to a PLA plastic, which is a plant-based plastic. So it's not derived from petroleum, but it is still technically a plastic and does not break down in the environment very well. And even though PLA products say they are compostable, they are, but it's got to be in an industrial composting facility. And we don't have many of those around. So basically, the concern is that switching to a PLA plastic is not addressing in any way the issue of straws remaining in the environment and causing harm to our wildlife. So Scott, I don't know, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, that basically is the issue, that we have this ordinance and it's not really doing what we'd like it to do, because the products that are being used now still don't break down in the environment. So I don't think we have to have a major rewrite. I just think we need to tweak the language so we get the result that we like and that we want.
Yeah, and so I guess any ideas on how we might tweak that? I mean, right now the ordinance says no plastic straws. Now, the ordinance does not define what a plastic is. In other words, it doesn't say a plastic made from petroleum, so I mean, it may be as simple as us interpreting it, assuming we can, to say that plant-based plastics are still plastics, and therefore they are not allowed under the current ordinance.
Well, I don't know how common the understanding is of these plant-based straws. Clearly, the companies have decided that it is in compliance with the regulations. Can't we just put into the ordinance a definition that says plastic is plastic, including petroleum and plant-based or something? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be one way to address it.
Jim, I just looked this up, and Jim Chitwood probably, he knows far better than I do. But it turns out these PLA plastics are not biodegradable, they are degradable. The enzymes that attack these plastics are pretty rare in the environment, so that's why they're not biodegradable, but they are degradable. So one way to fix the ordinance is to refer to materials that are allowed, they have to be biodegradable. And in fact, that would therefore eliminate the use of PLA plastics because they're not.
Right.
So that might be a very simple way to fix an ordinance, to simply state that something has to be biodegradable in order to be acceptable.
Could we also use the term single-use plastics?
Sorry?
Single-use plastics, would that not cover?
I don't know.
I don't think that would cover it. I like Jack's idea.
I like it too.
I like Jack's idea. The problem with the single use is that, these paper straws may be, quote, single use. I think what we really want is what Jack described.
We may have to also clarify, because people may not know what biodegradable versus degradable means right off, just from reading it.
That's why I think, that you'd also say that the ordinance includes plant-based plastics as well as
Petroleum based.
Yeah, I think,
petroleum-based.
yeah.
Jim,
Yeah.
Are the PLA plastics, are they a polymerized product as well in their manufacturing, or is it something else?
Yeah, ask Jim.
I am asking him. You see, I'm looking right at him.
I'm not an expert on it, but I suspect it's polymerized plastic.
Okay, so that might be another way of addressing it in language. It's just looking at polymerized versus a polymerized product.
What we want is a very layman-friendly set of
Yeah.
explanations that are crystal clear.
Yeah, and I think Pam's point, though, is that people may not understand degradable versus biodegradable. And so I agree that there's some language that needs to be changed to get to the intent of the ordinance.
What about
Jim,
Perhaps, but let me come back to what, so the ordinance says plastic straws are not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
If the PLA is in fact plastic,
It is.
then therefore they are not legal under our current ordinance.
Right.
We simply just need to start enforcing that and educate on that and let these, because certainly we can change the ordinance, but that's a process, right? Two
Right.
readings.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
that was my
Right,
question.
If our existing ordinance can deal with it, and we can legally interpret it that way and enforce it that way, then that's obviously the simplest fix. Because we can
Would
implement
that be-
that.
It is, Jim, and I think you can go ahead and start enforcing it. But if you have an opportunity without it being too much trouble to add some clarification for the layman in that as well,
Sure.
without quote unquote changing the ordinance, just providing some clarification description, I think it'd be useful.
Can
Okay.
you also, do we do anything in the ordinance with plastic silverware? Plasticware?
We do.
Yeah, I thought we covered that.
I was thinking we did, but it's being prolifically used.
Yeah, I'll pull it up real quick. And
I wasn't sure if we dealt with it island-wide or just on the beach. I couldn't remember the wording of that.
yeah, so here's what we did. All right, so no single-use plastic bags, no plastic straws or disposable food service ware containing styrofoam. So on the beach, we dealt with single-use plastic carryout bags, plastic straws, plastic foam products, and balloons. And then, so we did not, it appears.
Right.
If we're going to change it as we go forward, that might be something we want to consider.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
What-
Stephanie just weighed in and said that she does not think it covers cutlery. So
Right.
Yeah, it does not.
And I thought there was a reason when you guys had I wasn't with the committee then, but I thought there was a reason that was not included specifically. Because I remember at the time that it came up, a number of us were wondering about where it fell and was a little bit surprised that it wasn't there. So there must have been a reason for
I
that.
think the thinking on that was that there were alternatives for straws and for
Right.
packaging, but the cutlery, there were not as many commercially available alternatives, and we didn't want to be
Maybe
draconian with respect to the restaurant providers. I think that was the thinking.
I think that may be right, Scott.
Yeah, I think that's right. And also, when this ordinance was written, it was kind of mirrored off of what other beachfront communities in particular were doing. And none of those addressed cutlery. And so, I think that was another reason we did not include it.
So Jim, just to go back, because I was going to ask the question about process. If you just interpreted plastics, you would just basically let people know what the definition you would cover to keep going. But if we start rewriting language, we have to go through the full process of preparing, review, et cetera, which opens up for a lot of feedback, if you will.
Right, and the obstacle there is if our ordinance is massively different than, other beachfront communities, there's a potential for even more confusion. So if we can do it by interpretation and when people ask the town what this means, we're pretty clear. I mean, that would be certainly an easy fix.
Yeah, I agree. So,
well, and I think proactively notifying the resort and the restaurants to say that, here we felt there was a need for further clarification of the definition, so that because I think they're going to be a big source of the straws that are coming out there.
right. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll certainly look into that. Make sure we can, I think clearly we can interpret it that way. And then I'll work with Stephanie and others on a communication to, all of our businesses and entities and retail establishments, so they're aware of this updated interpretation, and that we expect them to, we'll probably give them some grace period to come into compliance, but we'll work on that. All right, that sounds good. All right, next one is potential for a no-wake zone at Captain Sam's Inlet. So I wanted to open this up to discussion. This request came from Lauren Rust at the Low Country Marine Mammal Network. As you all know, she's done a lot of work in the area. Runs our dolphin stewardship program, and obviously the hope, and it's probably going to be a challenge to get the state to enact a no wake zone in that area. But I wanted to have the committee discuss it and decide if the committee wanted to recommend that the town council basically send a letter of support. And so what I included in the materials was a potential draft that Lauren sent over that we might send in support of them. So I guess while we're discussing Captain Sam's, we should probably also discuss fishing and other activities at Captain Sam's. That's kind of become a hot topic here lately as well. Currently on the town side, we do have an ordinance that prohibits swimming or wading in Captain Sam's Inlet. But certainly we don't have any restriction against fishing or throwing a cast net or anything like that, which I'm not suggesting that we need something like that, or if we want to even consider that. I just want to have a conversation about it. So I guess if anybody has any thoughts on that, on the issue of Captain Sam's and dolphins and
what's a reason that you would need to go faster than no wake in that little tiny area? I mean, I don't know what the pushback is. It's not like boats are going in and out of there all the time.
Well, they are.
Yeah, they are.
They're not going through it, right? They're kind of circling around.
No,
they're going through it, because there are people that live up the various creeks with boat docks, and they're going out beyond the breakers
Really?
for fishing or recreation or whatever. So the reason that they go fast is impatience, clearly. I mean, they
right. Yeah.
Such a short little area there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little more than that. Having gone out that inlet myself a number of times, in the inlet itself, there's no reason to go fast. But once you get to actually the the channel to get into the
Yeah.
ocean. It is a very narrow channel, and can be very shallow. And if a larger boat is not up on plane, in other words, going fast where it's not drafting a lot of water, it can't get through the inlet. And so, I mean, and while I'm certainly all in favor of it being a no wake zone, at least a certain part of it, I think the biggest challenge is that is convincing the state that it's necessary, because they don't, these no wake zones are typically around, right, boat docks or commercial establishments or boat ramps. Rarely are they in a quote isolated, undeveloped area. So it's an uphill battle. I'm not saying it's not worth fighting and supporting, but I think it's certainly probably a challenge.
So there is at least some argument for a valid reason to go fast there. That's what I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I mean, probably not in the deep main part of the inlet where most people go to watch dolphins, but as you get a little further out into the ocean where the sandbars are, there probably is a legitimate need to go a little bit faster.
Yeah, but for somebody who's spent a lot of time on the Kiowa River, there are a lot of people who just like the thrill of going fast. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to happen.
And they do come.
Enforcement of a no wake zone is going to be an issue, but the first thing you need is no wake zone.
Precisely. And they do come through, not all the time, but pretty frequently. You'll see boats coming through at pretty high rates of speed and clearly having a good time doing it. And it's quite often when dolphins have been in the area and are present.
Right, and if they're going at a high rate of speed, they're not going to be able to see a dolphin in the water and take any effective action. They're just going to run them down.
Right. We get the dolphins. You have so many kayakers in that little area too. I would think that would be a safety concern just there, as you're coming off the river.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no place to go. I mean,
Right.
In a kayak, having been in a kayak there, if somebody's coming through pretty quick, you can get out of the way, but you can't escape the wake very easily.
I think it's a good idea and something that would be worth pursuing to see if it's possible to do something.
I agree with David.
Agree.
Signs and enforcement and all that's going to be another issue, but we got to get to no wake zone first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any?
So procedurally, Jim, does the committee just say we've heard this desire and that we endorse it, or how do we forward it on to council?
Yeah, we want to have a motion and a second, and basically that motion would be to recommend that town council send a letter of support to making Captain Sam's Inlet a no wake zone.
So moved.
So moved.
So, second.
I would like further
All right, so we've got a motion and a second, and
I would like further discussion, please.
All right, Matt, go for it.
So this is in, I guess, a request because of dolphin strand feeding in the area. We have had, and I can't think of the name, but we have had people out there taking data on strand feeding the past couple of years. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is there a measurable impact by boaters and by fishermen on dolphin strand feeding? Because if there's not, I think it's a moot point. I don't see, you could want it, but for what reason? If there's not a measurable impact, then you're just making more regulations for no real reason.
Well, Matt, I think you're being a little unrealistic, because if a dolphin is struck by a boat, but is not critically injured, you're not going to be able to tell from the shoreline. What you can see is a disruption in the behavior of dolphins if there are boats or people or kayaks too close. And there already exists in the federal regulations about marine mammals, a requirement that you stay 100 yards away. Well, as a practical matter, the spit at times is probably not 100 yards wide. So you could argue that you shouldn't be able to go at all in the area if the dolphins are there. So I think a no wake zone is a reasonable compromise here, rather than trying to document something that may be very difficult to do.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I'm not saying I'm for or against it. I'm just trying to take emotion out of the game and say, if there's not a measurable, I can't think of the right word. If there's not a measurable impact, then what are we trying to change? Just because maybe you don't like people going fast there, but again, if there's not a measurable impact to the dolphins, and I think, they're very different than a manatee. They don't get struck by motorboats very often, from what I know. And, I just question it if it's something that, while we may like it as an idea, is it something that should be now a state regulation for anyone who uses that public waterway? That is not a private Kiowa waterway.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Matt. I mean, ultimately, of course, the decision is up to the state, right? It's public state water, and they're going to make that decision. Like I said, it's likely quite an uphill battle, in part for some of the reasons you stated. I think in terms of collecting data on direct impacts of boats going faster, boats with a wake moving through the inlet, their impacts on dolphins, it'd be really tough to measure, right? Certainly there's probably some disturbance from that. It's probably short-lived, once the boats move through. But obviously, if you're collecting data while boats are on a regular basis going fast, you really can't tease out the data without stopping all fast traffic of boats for a period of time and then collecting data to compare to when boats are there, right? It'd be really hard to measure one way or another,
I think two things. Have we seen I would guess there's a lot of increased boat traffic there. I haven't seen that many there myself when I've been there, but I suspect just with more homes being built down there, there's probably more traffic. And I really think the danger to, kayakers is probably just as great as the danger to dolphins. Because sometimes you go out there and, there might be 10 or 20 kayaks and some of them are, have kids in them. And that would concern me more, just as much, at least, as the dolphin.
I mean, yeah, that's a great point, and I agree with the safety aspect. But I wonder, and some of you who volunteer down there, I know you keep records of, how many people are on the beach, and I assume, do you record numbers of boats or?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Like
we
that?
do.
Yeah, so there should be some data out there on.
We don't record speed, so.
You don't record.
Yeah, we don't record speed.
But I mean, that would be an interesting thing to add to the data collection was, record every boat that's going faster than no wake speed, basically.
I assume that the Low Country Marine Mammal Network is a respected organization. and that they're pushing this. We're just joining in to support it, I think. And then to Matt's point, just another thing to think about is we have no wake zones various places because people have docks. And I'm not sure there's any more data about the damage caused to docks and boats at the dock than there is to damage to the dolphins, and you still get no wake zones.
It's worth a try.
I thought that the draft letter sort of added in sort of the layers of concerns, which are obviously strand feeding is the thing that we see that everyone wants, but this is an area that's active for dolphins, for feeding, for mating, for a bunch of other things. And so the concern is that if they decide this is no longer an area that's worthwhile and change their spot for behavior, we do lose the thing that we're concerned about. And so that's the overarching concern, is that it's not just the strand feeding that gets disturbed, it's the dolphins in general.
All right, any other discussion?
Yeah, I just, one other point, what would be the size of a wake zone? I mean, I've seen people on the river, let's say from the Mingo Point dock, going pretty fast. Would that qualify as part of the no wake zone, or just down by the spit itself?
Yeah,
Just
I believe
Well, I have two reactions, Jack. First, around those docks at Mingo should be a no wake zone anyway. I
right.
mean, because I believe it's a state regulation about how far away from a dock is already required to be a no wake zone. Is that true?
It's 50 feet, and that is true.
But I think that the key area of concern is from where the old channel and the creek go up towards Seabrook, down to the mouth of the river. That area of the spit is what we're really talking about.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yep,
All right, if there's no more discussion, we'll take a vote on the motion that's on the table, which is to recommend that we do send a letter, recommend that the town sends a letter of support for this effort. So, all in favor, raise your hand. We got most everybody. All right, opposed. All right, we got Matt voting opposed. All right.
I have a real simple process question now. Do we know if Seabrook has also been approached? And if so, do we know if they've got a process in place in which, since they own part of that process in the spit as well, if we can get them on board as well, so that we present a united front?
I know that Lauren has reached out to them as well. I do not know if they plan to or will take any action, but we can certainly find that out.
Okay.
Certainly. All right. Well, we got through that pretty quick. So now we just have reports from the entities. And I've got a few things real quick from the town side. So just a quick update on the Bobcat GPS project. Nothing new since our last meeting. So no additional Bobcat deaths. So we still have 5 out of 6 that are wearing their GPS collars. And we've got 2 collars that we'll be sending back for refurbishment here shortly, and ordering 4 additional collars. So we'll have 6 collars to put out again this winter. And you know, that will be a part of this Clemson project, even though the work will basically be done as it has been in the past by Aaron and I. And that's all I have on that. Alligator calls. We've had 19 calls so far this year, and 2 alligators have been removed. So the removal number has not gone up since our last meeting. So it's been a fairly quiet alligator year this year. which is good. The last thing is Aaron's still on here. I'll let him give you an update on fall migration banding, which started August 15th. So he's a month into that, and I'll let him give you an update.
All right, yeah, so like Jim said, we're a month in. Been a pretty warm month. Not a whole lot of cold fronts to move birds to us. So it's been a pretty slow fall so far. I think we've caught maybe 1,400 birds or so. We should be normally have a little bit more than that by now. But I suspect in the next few weeks, things will be picking up, and those birds that are hanging out north of us will be moving through, and we'll be busy. So pretty much it. Not much else other than, I guess, we did start a new kind of a project this year, kind of associated with the banding of the birds. We are now recording bird calls at night. So I have a recorder set up in the dunes, and it basically records for 10.5 hours straight. And the goal is to identify flight call rates of birds migrating over Kiowa. And we can also identify species to a point by their little chip notes that they make while they're migrating. So it'll be kind of interesting to go through that data. There'll be a lot of it, but there's some automated processes that can help speed things along that I'll hope to kind of employ so I don't have to listen through thousands and thousands of hours of audio of nighttime crickets and surf noise and try to pick out bird calls. But that's about it.
All right, thanks, Aaron. So we'll move on to community association. Matt, you have anything?
All right, I'm back. Yeah, just a few things. So I went and checked, and I've reported on this kind of, I don't know, earlier this year, but we had sprayed, and it was a joint town and Kika effort to spray some invasive species basically a year ago. I think it was September of last year. One of the plants was Phragmites, which is a reed, a wetland reed. And I looked at those spots, and we had a very, very successful kill on that, which is great. So kind of wanted to report that. That's kind of a big win, and we'll keep an eye on it because it can be fairly persistent, but it looked like we were very effective this past year. There's been very, very little regrowth, so that's very good. I've had to spray after identifying a few species of algae in the water that have the potential to cause harmful algal blooms. They were not at that density yet, but we didn't want them to get there. So I've, just put out algicides to spray those algae to kind of keep the ponds in good health. And just some other nuisance aquatics have been sprayed. And that's about it for us. We had 4.5 inches of rain on Thursday of last week, and I think all the ponds fared pretty well. And Lucas may comment on the drainage, but the drainage did pretty good other than where pine straw and leaves clogged drains. But that's sort of not, I don't know, you can't necessarily plan for that. That's sort of spontaneous, I suppose. But anyway, that's all I've got.
Thanks, Matt. Lucas, you got anything else?
Sir.
All right, golf resort. We don't have anyone. ARB, no one. Conservancy, Collie or Taylor, y'all have anything additional to add?
No, everything's good here.
All right, Turtle Patrol, we don't have Lynn, but I can tell you that I don't know exactly what percentage of nests have hatched, but I think our total nest number was in the 340s. So it was a pretty good year. Citizens' comments, we have none. Chairman's comments, none. Any committee member comments before we adjourn? Nope. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone joining today, and we'll see you in 2 months. We'll get a motion to adjourn.
To move.
Second.
All in favor?